On this episode of the Scott Stedman Podcast, many of you were upset by the news of Robin Williams passing. We're going to discuss that. We're also going to discuss depression and also why we have such a strong connection with those in the entertainment industry. So stay tuned and listen here on the Scott Stedman Podcast.
Well, Alibaba had them 40 thieves, shirts I'd have had 1,000 tables. But master, you
Good
in
morning
luck, 'cause
and welcome
up your
to the
sleeve.
Scott Stedman Podcast. Is August 12th, and it's such a beautiful day here in Ohio. It rained last night, so the weather's pretty cool, so no need to turn on the AC just yet. And today we're going to talk a little bit about depression in Robin Williams and why we have such a connection with those in the entertainment industry. Now, last night was just on Facebook. I was actually uploading some videos from the performing arts camp that I was at about a month ago. And I saw the news that Robin Williams had passed away. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Like, I was really blown away by that. So the first thing I did is I went and I checked the internet just to make sure this wasn't a death hoax, because those seem to kind of come out and make sure, oh, is this actually a real thing? And sure enough, looking at different articles and seeing how they're from actual news source like CBS News and E! News, which I don't know if you would count E! News as a trustworthy source, but it is entertainment, so they probably would have the inside scoop on all that. And it just was saddening. And all throughout Facebook, I just kept seeing just things pouring out about how much they miss Robin Williams. People were putting quotes by Robin Williams. People were changing their profile pictures to pictures of Robin Williams characters, or like one of my friends, Brian, who's a pastor out in Missouri, he posted a picture of Aladdin hugging the genie, who the genie was voiced by Robin Williams in the Disney classic Aladdin. So we see that a lot of people really connected with Robin Williams, and I believe there's two reasons why we connect to Robin Williams. First, let's go ahead and talk about the reason of just mental illness and depression. There's an article that one of my acting cohorts posted, and this person writes this about his death, and here's what she writes. She writes, "But here's the thing about his death that is hurting so many people right now. When someone who publicly advocates for a disease that you're intimately familiar with decides the pain is too much to bear, even with every resource available to him, what hope is there for the rest of us who battle the disease on a daily basis? I don't have the money to fine-tune my addictive personality. Hell, I don't even have reliable health insurance." So we see, and just reading that paragraph from this article, which I will post on the notes from the show, and really the title of it is Why Robin Williams' Death is So Personal for Us All, we really see that, for those of us who do have a mental illness, I know with my parents having a history of mental illness, and from depression to DID, one of the things that they've learned in support groups is that, everybody has either depression or some people have DID, even famous people. And obviously one of the things that was mentioned was that Robin Williams not only struggled with depression, but he also did struggle with dissociative identity disorder, or which back in the 80s when my parents went to this thing, it was called a multiple personality syndrome. And you see that there's a connection. And the interesting thing about people with depression is there's so many different shades of depression. You have people who may have a season of depression. They may just kind of be depressed for a season, but then they will come to pass. They get into it, they get out of it. And then there's other people who have depression that's more chronic or clinical. where it's something that they have to take medicine for, something that they're seeing a therapist for. They're constantly getting help for depression. And one of the interesting things about depression is that it affects a lot of people. Now, I know there might be some people who be like, well, people who only have depression for a season, it doesn't really count. My whole take of this is depression is depression. And sure, I may not be clinically depressed, but when I have even for me who have a season or a bout of depression occasionally, it still affects me. It still affects me, and sometimes it seems like I'm losing my mind. And some people start off by having a season of depression, and it ends up cycling into a full-blown clinical depression. So one of the ways that I think a lot of people are connecting with Robin Williams in a way is that, all of us have had depression at some point in our lives. So his death, and knowing that, he's been checked into rehab, he's been struggling with depression for half his life. That's something that, which I think the author of this article is right. It's like, well, for someone who decides that the pain is too much to bear, even though Robin Williams had lots of money and had lots of resources, and he ended up saying, I'm taking my life, which that's still an apparent suicide. It hasn't been officially confirmed yet. But yeah, people read this and they go, well, if this person that has all the money in the world, have this, then how can I not, what hope is there for me? And I think the one part that we always have to remember is that, we always have to keep fighting. We always have to keep fighting. We always have to continue to get help. And especially if you know someone who is struggling with depression, always be there for them. I mean, one of the things about depression is that you could be in a group of people that you love, or friends or whoever, and you could be sitting in a room and you could still feel like the loneliest person in that room. And that's what depression does. And I think sometimes we need to get help, but we want to really be able to reach out to those people. And you don't have to be a doctor or a therapist to be with somebody who has depression and just be their friend or talk to them and help them out. And I know we have our limits as humans. I know you can help out people or be there with them for so long, so much before, you have to go to your doctor's appointments, or you have to deal with your kids, or you have to go to your job and do stuff. So you can't be with someone every single day. But what little you can do to help makes a huge difference. And you really got to really focus on doing your part to help depression. I know, talk a little bit about my journey with depression. I ended up hitting a big bout of depression when I was in college. I was attending a Christian university, and for some reason, I started to get into a bout of depression. I felt like I was no good. I felt like no one really cared about me. I would try to hang out with people from my social club, or hang out with my cohorts in the theater department, or even those in the Bible and religion department. And really, I'd have fun with them, I'd talk with them, but at the same time, I still felt alone. And then I started to develop, it was during that time where I started to develop an addiction to pornography. And it was one of those catch-22 things, because, in a way, at that moment when I would be looking at those things, I felt good about myself. I felt, I almost felt like that these images that are saying that these were my true friends, that they cared about me, that they made me feel loved, they accepted me for who I was. And on the same time, there was this a guilt, because here I was going to a Christian university. I was living off campus at the time, so I was having my own separate internet connection and not necessarily using the school's internet. And so I felt like, oh, well, I'm doing something bad, and I'm studying to be going to the ministry, and I'm helping out at church events, and I work at over the summer I work at a Christian camp, and I tell people about Jesus. But here I am struggling with this this addiction. But so it was always this constant battle that always would interfere in my life. And one of the things that helped me get help and to be open and talk about my addiction and just and even talk about my depression was I was watching a movie. It was in a class called the History of Theater and Drama, and during this course we would watch movies, and we'd have to do like a film study. We'd watch them, and I remember one of the films we watched was this little unknown film called The World According to Garp, and it starred Robin Williams and it starred Glenn Close. And I'm watching this movie, and as I'm sitting here, I'm really connecting with Robin Williams' character, Garp, and instantly, like, his mom was working at a convent, at an orphanage. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, so I probably might have some inaccurate information here, so I do apologize. But there's a scene where, like, some boys are in the orphanage, and they're looking at, like, a Playboy, and they see that someone's coming, so they go and they throw the Playboy into the crib where Garp is, and then you see Garp, like, looking at this Playboy magazine. And throughout the movie, there's always been this obsession with Garp and sex. You know, he would be making out with a girl behind the bushes and filling her up. Even when he was married, you know, he started to have an affair. And there's always these things where this at the early age, this idea of sexual addiction and how it just kind of moved its way and weaved its way throughout the story, and you kind of forget about it, but then it'd be right there, and all of a sudden when you see something happening that was sexual in nature, you start to go, oh, there's something, oh, that's because when a baby, he was looking at a Playboy. And you start to see this process, and there's also this other process that happened throughout the movie where there's this one girl who kind of witnesses some of this stuff, who is very slow, doesn't really talk much, and she's always, not in all the things, but anytime when there was some type of sexual deviancy going on, she would always occasionally pipe in or be present, and always had this unfavorable view of Garth. And then, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm not going to spoil it, but those two, this girl and Garp, with this whole thing, ends up coming to a climax and a point where Garp's life starts falling out of control. And then he starts to slowly try to pick up the pieces again, and eventually he has an encounter with this girl, and it ultimately leads to his ruin. And again, I know I may spoil a little bit, but I'm not talking exactly what happens. And when I saw that, that movie in a way really opened up my eyes and saying, if I don't get help, if I don't be open about my addiction and my depression and really get this out and really be open about this, then eventually it's going to lead to my ruin. And that was just kind of the message I was getting, whether it was something I interpreted from the film or maybe it was a secret message from God that was communicating that to me, like, you need to really talk about this. And so I did, and I remember talking about it. I remember talking to my girlfriend at the time about my addiction, and I guess she loved me so much that we ended up getting married, and we're still married to this day. But I remember having that conversation with her, and that was just a start of the healing process of just being open with it. And usually when I give my testimony, I usually try to talk about those addictions and depression, and usually the message is get help. Always get help, and be honest about it. Like, never hold it in. The problem with mental illness and even like with addictions too is we always keep it to ourselves. And I don't know if it's just a stigma that we have in America, or even just in the world, where if we have something wrong with us, like a mental illness, we don't want to say anything, because back in the day, you say something that you're your mind's unstable, you go into a mental institution and they do lobotomies and everything else or whatever. But we live in a world now where we need to really be open and honest about what we're struggling with and try to get that help. And the more as we continue to get that help and the more we continue to shower love for those that do have mental illness, I think that goes a long way in their recovery. Now, the second thing is about Robin Williams' death is, what is it about people in the entertainment industry that we connect with? Why do we connect with that? And I always feel like anytime when there's and I haven't seen it yet with Robin Williams, but I've seen it with other celebrities that have passed away, especially those who may have died in really horrible circumstances, like Paul Walker in a car crash, or even Heath Ledger with an overdose of pills. We seem to gravitate and we seem to really focus on that. And usually, and this is one of the things that's great about social media, is that when something like this happens, you got a group of people who go, "Oh, it's tragic, it's sad, rest in peace Robin Williams, rest in peace Paul Walker, rest in peace this celebrity." And then you have this group over here on the other side of social network that says, well, there's people dying overseas. There's soldiers who are dying overseas to protect our freedoms, and all we seem to care about is a dead actor or a dead musician. And really kind of highlight like, oh, yeah, we never seen this person serve our country, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of, there's people starving overseas, but yet we're too fixated on this guy who died in a car accident. And it seems like there's always those two sides of the argument. But I think deep down, the reason why I think we have this connection with actors is something in the theater world and even in the literature world too, called ego identification. And ego identification basically is when we connect with somebody, whether it be someone in a book, TV, music. There's something about that character that we connect with. And sometimes there's certain characters we connect with and there's certain characters we don't connect with. And again, just going back to my history of theater and drama class, we talked about that connection with characters, and one of the assignments we had to watch was an Oliver Stone movie called Natural Born Killers. And you're watching this movie, and one of the things that was interesting about this movie is my teacher goes, who did you connect with in this movie? And really, no one could connect with anybody in this movie, because there was always, right when you start to have a connection with a certain character, something would happen, like a bad quality that happened. They'd be like, oh, wait, no, I don't want to connect with this person because they're really a bad person. So it's very interesting how we have these, how we really connect with people. And especially like talking about my story about The World According to Garp, I really connected with Robin Williams' character in that movie, because I think just the way he portrayed everything, and even just working together with other actors and actresses and the director and the writing, and when all those pieces come together and it's done well, you can really connect with something, and it's something that can really change your life. It changed my life for me, and I think that's one of the things which, obviously, if Robin Williams is sitting right next to me, which who knows, he may be right now, just to say, what, that movie, it was one of the very first movies you did, World According to Garp. You probably thought it was a horrible movie, but yet it was a movie that really had a profound impact on me to get help. And I think looking at some of his other characters, like, sure, I don't think anybody connected with his character in 1 Hour Photo, but we've connected to the genie in Aladdin. We connected to his character in The Fisher King, or Good Will Hunting, or Patch Adams, maybe Mrs. Doubtfire, I don't know. We've always connected with an actor or an actress. And I think that's the reason why, because when we connect with someone, the reason why we connect with them is because it's really speaking or touching to something in our own lives. Watching someone struggle with drug addiction, think that's something that, people who do struggle with drug addiction, that's something that they can connect with. um, someone who, loses someone to cancer, they could watch a movie uh, about that too and really connect with that scene or with that character. Um, so really, I think that's why, as human beings, we connect to people in the music industry or the entertainment industry in general, is because they had a role or they had a song that really connected to us in our life at a certain point and stage in our life, that really hits our heart, that really hits our soul. And when it hits that, I think we get to the point where when they're gone, we're saddened because they had such an impact in our lives, and which may seem like a little small way by watching a hour and a half film or listening to a 5-minute song, but it affected us in such a way that has helped change our lives. And I think that's one of the reasons why we connect so much to those in the entertainment industry, and we're saddened when they are lost. So again, I think that's why with Robin Williams' death, why it's such a big impact on our lives, is because he has, you know, made so many people think. He has made so many people cry. He has made so many people laugh from all the different characters that he has played, that it really affected us for the better. And we just like to thank you for that, Robin. And that is all the time we have for this show today. Again, if you'd like to comment on this podcast, you can go to thescottstedman.com, TheScottStedman. You can go to that webpage, and you can go ahead and have a conversation, write what you think about anything about the page. You can also write it on any Podomatic page or anywhere else. Obviously, you can even just write about it, whatever. If this podcast is meaningful and you want to continue the discussion on even depression or even just Robin Williams' life, go ahead and have that discussion. Again, I will be posting an article about from notes of the show from the article that I mentioned today, and also some resources for those who are struggling with depression on sites where they can go and get help. All right. Well, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will talk to you later.